Hi, I'm Al Bain, and welcome to the Taxi Studio Be More Fearless podcast series. And today we're going to kick off our first podcast around imagination, which is one of the 5 stages of fear. And those 5 stages, as we see them, are imagination, fear itself, paralysis, acceleration, and memories. And it's with great pleasure today that I welcome Steve Furst. Hi, Steve.
How are you, Al?
I'm very good, mate. I'm very good, thank you. You're good as well?
I'm all right. Yes, thank you. Fine. I don't know how long into this strangeness we are, but different days. They kind of throw up different challenges, and work is certainly very different. The landscape ahead is very different. But lucky enough to be in a nice place in the countryside, and spent lots of time with the family. So looking for the positives in everything, really.
Absolutely. I think that's a good little summary there. And I've been referring to our current situation as old world and new world.
Yeah,
It,
yeah.
it, and I think you're absolutely right. We've also got to take these small wins as we see them and acknowledge them, because we've all been running at a tremendous pace, but actually the thing that we've been given is a little bit of time to appreciate everything, which is a good thing, isn't it? Something we often forget, I think, in life. For those of you out there who'd like to know a bit more about Steve straddles many different entertainment disciplines. He's been a stand-up, an actor, a character comedian, does cabaret, and is a West End star, a musical, and a writer. He's the recognisable face, having appeared in many TV shows over the past 20 plus years. Starred in over 30 multi-award-winning Orange Gold Spot commercials in the cinema, and was also a featured supporting actor in the brilliant Little Britain in all 3 series. And that's something that's very fond in my heart, locked from a few years ago. You've also got this amazing character, Lenny Beige,
Yep.
and you've starred in 2 series of the Variety Pack for the BBC. You've had numerous appearances on other TV shows. You've been a presenter on Soho Radio since it began 7 years ago, and still host a monthly show.
Yeah.
And you've been a favourite panellist on Channel 5 show The Right Stuff. In the theatre, you've played Mr Wormwood in Matilda. God, bloody love Matilda. In over 600 shows, and a part of the original cast of Made in Dagenham. And last year played the titular role in Mr Gum and the Dancing Bear at the National Theatre.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good resume, isn't it?
It's not bad. It's weird because when you hear it back, I think it is something to be proud of. When you're struggling for work, most of us do it from time to time. The sense of self-worth, of course, goes down because we're only validated by how much we work.
Yeah.
And I've been incredibly lucky in terms of the people that I've supported in shows like Little Britain or whatever, but we all started together. So, we kind of all rose up at the same time. And, I've been fortunate that I've known some exceptionally talented people who think the same of me, and who, I wouldn't say I've had an easy ride, but you can certainly, if you're part of a wave. We were doing the club at the same time as Little Britain, the club that Lenny Beige was born out of, and it felt very much we were part of a movement. We were creating a bit of a movement in London, and it was a kind of golden time then. It's a very different time now, and what I do is still quite valid, but it's definitely a different landscape now, and you have to kind of adapt and change, as with what you do. You have to adapt and change to how the landscape shifts as well. So I never stop working, and I never stop fearing the lack of work, which spurs me on, and that's good. I think we do need a little bit of that kind of to keep the fire in our bellies going.
I think you're absolutely spot on. So that's a really good. You made lots of good points in there. I think it's lovely that you recognize you were part of that movement and that school of incredible characters, of which I got to be honest, you are one of those. You are as revered by others as much as you revere those around you. You've done some incredible things, but the ability to change only happens when change is required, and and that's where good growth comes from. So these things which are presented to us as challenges and often feel uncomfortable is where good stuff comes from. So I'm just gonna introduce to the listeners a little bit about like what it is that we see as imagination within the 5 stages of fear. So
Yes.
imagination is when we experience fear, and we kind of imagine all the possibilities of what could go wrong, and we get wrapped up in that kind of exaggerated expectation and worried about what the future consequences could be. And it's where like a rational thought and imagination replace logic, to be quite fair, and we analyze every part of what surrounds the fear, potentially working it up to be a bigger threat in our minds than it is in reality. And basically, we're trying to convince ourselves that avoidance is always the best tactic, but often that can be the worst tactic. So it's a very interesting thing, imagination. I think it's a super powerful tool if we can learn to use it in the right way, Steve. And I mean, interestingly, it has the power to be both good and horrifically bad for the.
Isn't it weird that you use you're using the term imagination to cover both, whereas I don't think I would have ever used imagination to box up and label my fear, my projected, as you are calling it, projected imagination on the dark side of the equation.
Yeah.
I don't know what word I would have it, but I suppose it just fear encompasses the bad imagination.
The imagination stage is a stage where actually, hopefully, we need to understand how to control it a little bit better
And overcome it.
and overcome it. Yeah, like it does make people excel, or it cripples people. I've seen people in my life that are crippled by what they think is in front of them. But I've also seen people like go beyond their entire expectation because they have this mindset of like not wanting it. Let them beat them. Have you seen people like that? Or
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's interesting this kind of where it ties into memory, because as performers, I think sports people fall into this category as well.
Yeah.
You have a bad gig, and then you have a run of 100 good gigs. The only one you go back to is the bad gig, which is why then that also the good gig or the excellent moment or the last minute goal in extra time then gets tied into this kind of, or this almost supernatural power that it can have, which is something I absolutely, and I've always railed against the whole kind of voodoo witchcraft nonsense of, well, I was wearing pink socks when I did that gig and it was incredible, so therefore I've got the ritual, the kind of, I find that can also fuel the bad imagination. It can also, because if something goes wrong, it's another strata of worry that you're creating for yourself in this kind of prison of doom. So I shy away from thinking of the amazing gigs as well as the crap ones if I can, and try and look forward. So I try and erase the memory and just forward project. And of course, it's, we are fallible human beings. It's very difficult to forget that extraordinary moment on stage when you did freeze in front of 2,000 people and you thought that moment lasted for half an hour, and in fact it only lasted for 5 seconds. So it's sometimes easier said than done, but yeah, I always tell people, if I'm teaching or whatever, that people want you to do well. They don't want you to screw up. They don't want to have a bad time.
I think that's some excellent points you made there. Particularly the one that I really like is where you said, and I've been a firm fan of this one, just in people within my own business when I'm trying to like mentor them a little bit, like around presenting and stuff. Like when you're in a room with people and they're paying for you to be there.
Yes.
They want you to do good. Like there is, like we create that fear a little bit of actually that that we're daunted by it, but I've also learned one of the self tips that I've given myself in I've been incredibly lucky with regards to the profile and types of people that we've met and that we do work with in our day job here. And it used to really daunt me when we go into a C-suite room and meet people, but actually they are just human beings like ourselves, who actually at that moment can't do what they need to do, which is why you're there.
Yeah. There's a thing about, I think, in the world of comedy, because in theatre you just go up and do it and you get applause at the end of it, hopefully. But in stand-up, there's always been the thing about the heckler, about the, oh, well, they can bring you down if they can. You know, we've all heard the horror stories of, oh, they just started screaming at me for no reason. Well, you know, I didn't do stand-up as me for that long, but I've certainly been around comedians most of my life, and I've been to, and, you know, I've performed in those sort of arenas. That is quite, I quite like, I mean, to have that sort of response from an audience, or the love from an audience. The worst response is the middling, nah, in this kind of, they're not fussed either way. That's all right. This is the curse of entertainment, of art. It should, there was a great story of the amazing director, Jonathan Glazer, who made Sexy Beast, amongst other, you know, great advertising director.
Yeah, I know.
Made Under the Skin, but with Scarlett Johansson, which is a very dark, strange film. And she really felt uncomfortable doing it. And they went to show it in Cannes, and she sat next to him, and half the audience, I mean, Cannes obviously very vocal at the end of the films during the festival, half the audience stood and cheered and the other half stood and booed.
Wow.
And it was split down the middle, and she looked at Jonathan Glazer and just went, I don't understand. He said, this is exactly the reaction this film should have had. You either hate it or you love it. And the thing in the middle is the death of art. So for me, you know, I don't think heckling is a bad thing. I think if people hate you that much, that you've got a dialogue going. If you can't have a dialogue in the middle, it just feels like there's just disinterest, you know? So I like passion either way. I love it when people go off on a rant. Just love it, you know, because that's where usually comedy is. That's when people are at their funniest.
I just wanted to chat a little bit about imagination and how it fuels some of the actions and provides us with like caution, desire, and happiness and fear, and like how you package that up for your advantage. So, you know, like if I review like your amazing career and the roles that you've had and some of the character creations, such as like Lenny or Graham and some of these other bits and pieces, like they don't just appear. Like, how do you create those personas that you use and flex on stage and to entertain people? Like how and what role does imagination play for you in that?
Well, I suppose, you know, you have to forward, anything you write, you have to forward project. And you put yourself, I think I over intellectual, I mean, I know my wife will say this, I over intellectualize things too much in terms of, you know, I'm always thinking about, well, how's it going to go down? What about this? What about that? Whereas when things grow organically and it just feels right, you suspend the imagination a little bit and let the creative process kick in. When you're just writing at home, and like I am at the moment, and I'm trying to create, I've got a multi-character show where I've got 6 characters or 7 characters,
Wow.
maybe 6. And I wanted to kind of have, you know, up to about 9. So I could do 4 in one half, 5 in the other, or the other way around. And so I'm trying to create 3 more. So it's quite an interesting time to answer this. And I make notes of characters, like little sketches, or I'll see someone on a documentary particular. I think that's a nice idea. That hasn't gone far enough in this documentary. I can see something. And so, and you know, some will just kind of grow shoots quite quickly. Or I'll go back to it. It's like songwriting. You just kind of write a little sketch and you go, oh, actually, no, I think there's something in that. Or it might be a look that you'll just sketch down. Or so it is actually trying to suspend the imagination a little bit and let the organics kind of take their course. Yeah,
I can see that. That's quite interesting, and you made it like an interest. I think one of the interesting points you said about, like, you know, the pre-prescriptive versus the organic and understanding that interpretation, and it's like an interesting point with regards to life right now, the over analytical approach to everything.
yeah.
Because
Well, you must know, you work. I mean, you work in your business in
yeah,
teams, often, don't you, or in pairs? Or, you know, I mean, I've worked with creatives in advertising and doing voiceovers as well for years.
yeah,
And again, in comedy, it was much the same thing. You know, when you watch people like back in the day when Matt Lucas and Dave would work together, and when those teams work and bounce off each other, then it is very organic, and it is keepy uppy with the football. You know, it's bouncing ideas, and sometimes the solitary work can be a very difficult thing for this sort of creative process. And I think the intellectual and the imagination, the bad imagination, can creep in a lot easier when it's by yourself.
Have any of the characters that you've created, have they ever like put fear into you themselves? Because you like think, or do you like the presence of like when you're actually in character? Does that like maybe potentially scare you sometimes because they're such a force themselves? Can that take over?
Sometimes the getting lost in a character is interesting because I combine my ability to improvise on stage into a few of my characters. So my Mayor of Kentish Town character, which I'm kind of revisiting again, is a bit of a force of nature, and he works very well in an improvised capacity, especially in a small room where I can be even bigger. And I, at times when that really flies, it feels like a bit of a typhoon.
I can get that with Graham. I've listened to quite a lot of Graham's encounters. I'm going to call them because they're incredible bits of life that he recites. And
yeah, he's a high art versus he's very verbose, but with a bass sounding. You know, he's got like that voice. He's got that proper London voice, but he's also he talks. He's very loquacious, and he's very quick. He's ba 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 ba. So it's actually quite a difficult character. You have to get into the gear of doing him. But I mean, at every point, it has to be me sort of making the decision as to what I'm saying, especially in improv. You know, I can't say it's free falling where somebody else takes over. I think there's always a modicum of me steering the vehicle or stoking the engine.
But like puppeteering, really. So you're still in control, but there's this facade that sits in front of you. Yeah,
I've never been one of those. You know, I mean, you know, there are moments on stage. I think, especially singing, where you just get lost and wrapped up in a song. And I certainly see it in musicians all the time, and you know, my stepfather and so forth. But you still have to, you still can't let go. You still have to use you're still having to play in tune and concentrate in order to hit those notes or hit that string at the right point. So I'm not sure if I've ever subscribed to the point where, another force takes over and you're unaware of your own being.
Do you think your imagination was just different or stronger in your youth or in your later years now? Like, because I was trying to think about it, from my point of view. Like, one is unfiltered, isn't it, from when you're younger in life, and the second is more informed. And I think they're both powerful. I'm not sure if one's better than the other, but I wondered if, from your point of view of like in what you do, how was that development for you?
Well, I don't know if I think you're right. I think the one is more informed the later on because we have that body of experience and that not just our own, but the collective experience of family and friends and so forth and cohorts and peers. That youthful arrogance sometimes of not thinking about it, of just kind of just bowling straight in without consequence. I think the difference is, and hopefully, I'm talking from experience, is that people say you get wiser as you get older. I don't know if it's a wiseness so much as just being more pragmatic. And I think I've always had that in me. I've been a great, and this from my stepfather. Well, let's just see it from their point of view. I've always been, well, let's just sit down and not just kick off before we've examined why. And I think that with imagination, I'm like, okay, I understand why I'm thinking that. So I think I can deal with it in a more pragmatic and calm, and I suppose mature way. I see, especially in theatre, you spend a lot of time with younger people. And I was just about to start doing a new show, and my God, in every theatre show, there always used to be, you'd be like, who's the old bloke at the end of the table? And in this theatre show, in the read through, I went, oh, I'm the old bloke at the end of the table, which hadn't really happened before. But it's amazing when something happens in the room and how hysterical they get about it. And of course, you just want to, you look at them as your own children after a while, and you just want to take them aside and go, okay, you are letting your fear and your imagination run wild here. I don't think that's going to happen. I think, if I can give you any advice, all I can do is speak from experience that I don't think this will be an eventual outcome. And I think that's all you can do as someone who's a bit older. And that's, that thing of giving advice, people kind of like it as well, because it does calm them down and they go, oh, actually, yeah. So I think that's the difference. It's not the actual imagination that's particularly different necessarily. It's how you deal with it.
It's better informed, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I kind of argue the fact that more information is better. Well, not better. It gives. I hate to use this word, but like from my own purpose and what we do, it gives a more rounded commercial outcome versus being shooting from the hip.
Yeah.
We've so ironically we've worked on some stuff recently with regards to understanding how to reduce risk and stuff in what we do, because obviously again there's that fear thing. People are worried about investing in things when it's not proven, and understanding how we can better validate our thinking and our imagination and the things that we commercialize, to be frank, for want of a better word. So I think actually that's what experience teaches you, that actually freedom of thinking is incredible, but often sometimes it is scary, isn't it, for others?
Well, I would say there's a thing, and I was guilty of it, which is the fear of screwing up in front of other people. And when I look at people that have no fear, that just get up and it doesn't matter if it falls flat on its face, my God, am I jealous of that? And I've certainly acquired a lot more of that later in life. Again, a weird, strange Benjamin Button arse over tit way of going about things in my life, where you're not meant to have the fear and let your imagination get the better of you as a younger person. So I've kind of harnessed that much later on, where I'm like, I don't care if I look like a dick here. You just get up, and there's a saying in musical theatre, well, better to be strong and wrong than just not doing anything. So you don't laugh. You just allow failure, and failure is a part of the creative process. And of course, this is why I feel very sorry often for creatives in your line of work, is that you can't afford to have that up failure, because the client, these are different times. The client, there isn't the money around to allow that to happen. So the pressure is greater for smaller budgets to turn out work. I like when things don't work the first time. I like when series build over two. Only Fools and Horses wouldn't have lasted nowadays. It would have only been one series. Nah, it wasn't that good. No, because it took 3 series for it to really find its feet. Same, my favorite series, Seinfeld in America. 3 series. It took, nearly 30 programs for it to find its feet.
Wow, that's an incredible observation, actually. It's very true. And it's something again, I use it a lot here with the great people we have on our team, is don't be afraid of the F word. Failure, like you say, it's a good thing if we learn from it. It's an awful thing if you don't learn from it, if I'll be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But learn from it. That's where growth comes from. And actually, it's giving yourself the ability to explore those peripheries and the boundaries and work out what's right and wrong.
That's exactly it. And I think this is also I don't want to say, this is what's wrong with television nowadays, but it is, because when you are only seeing polished, programs where you're not seeing the weird and the strange and the odd and that it can only be your 5 minutes of polished material, which is why the shelf life of people is so alarmingly quick now. Whereas you just don't have that. If you're a stand-up and you've got a special on TV, it's going to take you a long time to get another special, unless you're some kind of genius. So it chews you up and spits you up very quickly. Whereas I used to revel in seeing the weird shows with the weird acts and the strange and things that didn't work. I think things don't work. It's as important as the things that do work, because I'm a passionate believer in those acts that are unpolished and uncategorizable, and I'm not saying that they're going to become superstars, but I think you need to balance it out. You need to balance the pizzazz and the showbiz and the sheen out with stuff that's a bit crap at times, because
do you know what? I love that, actually. That's a really, really good point. And I'll tell you why I love that. Is because I think the bit that you're talking about there is like leaving ourselves opportunity and our imagination to fill in the gaps. And, because that's the problem with stuff is too polished. There's no opportunity for creative interpretation or like any of that ability to see some of the bits yourselves. Like you're just basically on receive, like someone informs you and then you're on receive. And weirdly, so this is a really weird way of talking about it, but like I was at somebody's, and it wasn't at somebody's house, we were on holiday in an Airbnb somewhere, and they had one of these really fancy, like new, I say it like now I'm sounding like a dinosaur, that one is really new fancy 4K TVs. And I sat down and I watched like something that we watch at home because we've got like a much older TV, to be quite frank. And I was mortified because the amount of detail that I could see then made it look crap.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, that's that whole thing now of directors getting fed up with the Ultra HD thing, which it changes the whole look of films, which are shot on film, which, as we know, is a very particular art in terms of how you light it, how you shoot it, how you process it, how you edit it. It's not TV, it's not tape, it's not digital. And when you make everything look digital and like a horrible Mexican soap opera, then the end result is you're changing someone's product ostensibly. And I like the fact that certain directors have said, we need to get away of opting out of the default picture on these tellies to watch films. You need to be able to say no. We need to be able to take it back to that and to make it look like it should do. We're still watching DVDs and on a nice telly. So that's a really good compromise. You see the picture that should be seen, but on a big screen. So
it's funny, isn't it? Like like these things that you think are always for the cause of better actually aren't always giving you the desired.
No, because they're done for people who just want to watch Man United play live or the X Factor. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so that sort of stuff looks amazing. I mean, it's pinprick. It's just the full horror of Cal's face can be seen. In all its horrific glory. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely what I want on a Saturday night. That's brilliant. In fact, it just made me think of it. Then I think what I love about like live entertainment and theatre and stage and dirty nightclubs and stuff. All of that stuff. What I love about it is the fact that normally there's like one or a few people on stage that are lit, and then you are given the ability to imagine the stuff around it based on the bits of information that you're given, and that's actually beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I know this kind of bit. Yeah, I mean, I vacillate between despair and hope, like I think a lot of us do. Because actually, when we're in the theatre and people are loving it and the magic of it transports you, and I think, and also magic is that there's another thing. We know it's magic, but I watched a program last night, and Penn from Penn and Teller was being interviewed, and he was like, magic is one of those art forms you have to be in the room to see it. We know it's magic, but there's something to about watching it live to see it happen in front of your eyes that you have no idea how it's done. We've lost the ability to go, we don't generally go and see that live. We're so inured to seeing it on TV and things on TV, and we do lose the magic. And I think you're right. I think what happens in the shadows is as important as what happens on the stage. That little box that we're looking at, well, there's a world around it, other dimensional world that we don't see, but our imagination is hopefully fired up enough to conjure it up. So I think we'll never lose that, because I think people will always come back to the magic of live performance, because it is extraordinary when it's done well. And we can throw as much jiggery poker in and technology at theatrical shows, and God knows I've been in a few shows that have had that. At the end of the day, you just you can't get away from the magic of one person standing on stage singing something and tearing at your heartstrings.
That's what people fall in love with, and I think, just from a bit of relative context, how do you think the theatre world's going to deal with delivery going forward? Is there anybody I know some people are starting to live stream performances and stuff now.
Well, I'm one of them. We're doing it on September the 10th. I think what we want to do with Justin, our mutual friend, and I, and he's a great thinker as well, in terms of taking what I've got and harnessing it and going, well, let's take this forward. Let's meet this challenge and go, you've got something here. You built a family doing performances from your home. Let's see how the streaming will work, and let's work it into a different way. Let's take streaming into a different area. Let's work with other people streaming. It does. So that's one thing. That's one thing to kind of monetize what we do, but using our expertise in what we do. But the other much broader question, which is, what is going to happen with this business, and no one knows. And the problem is the infrastructure. Can the infrastructure survive another year without? When Lloyd Webber's talking about reducing capacity of the Palladium by over half, I can't see how in any way that this can work, other than the fact that he can bankroll it because he's a billionaire. But it's musical theatre's got to work at 80% capacity usually, so maybe 75%. So it needs it. The bar needs a big spend, because that props up a lot of the staff costs as well. All of these things. But that's just for the West End. I mean, provincial theatre and off West End, incredible venues that have built up over the last 10 years, particularly off West End, so doing the best work sometimes in the world, with new playwrights and all-inclusive casting and so forth. This is due to off West End. And I honestly, that's when the fear kicks in terms of the long term, and I don't know how they can survive beyond Christmas. And I hope, I don't know what the answer is. And I'm doing a live performance, a theatrical live performance in August as well. But that's just it's pocket money, and it's lovely to be able to do it and just exercise those muscles again. But that's not an answer. That's papering over a crack in a dam that's about to burst, I think. When people come off furlough and all the rest of it, I think it's going to be very, that's without the second spike if that happens. So it's a pretty bleak looking picture for a lot of theatrical organisations that are suffering anyway at the best of times.
Which is a shame, really, because when I think about like comedy and entertainment, actually, you said it earlier, and it's one of the bits I'll probably close with, is like, it's like medicine, isn't it? And it's actually what everybody needs right now. Is you bring a lot of hope.
Yeah, and I think this government have without wanting to be party political about it, but since I was a kid, the right have never seen the value of art until it suits their aims to project Britain as a paragon of fine export, art export. They've only ever whittled and derided the arts in terms of their financial support and the Arts Council and so forth, because they've never valued it, and it's just not important. Money is important, and it's a very depressing way of viewing the world. That you can get to the back of the queue. You're not that important. You know, it's like, it's the way that some parents would view what their kids want. What, you want to do that? Well, when you finish playing at that, maybe get a proper job. And actually, you know, it is a craft like anything else that needs to be worked at. And more than that, it fills a huge amount of people, as you say, with joy. And it is like a medicine for so many people.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I have the hope that, you know, that entire segment is made up with incredible people like yourself, and that you'll have the power of imagination to like get the answers out of there if the restrictions are going to stay, because we all know the force of good that it can bring. I was just like, you know, before we start like wrapping up, I just had another question I just wanted to ask around the power of imagination in group.
Yeah.
And the exponential kind of factor that has. I can imagine that it, you know, there's it's almost like by osmosis, isn't it? I can imagine, like, particularly if like when you're working on something together collectively, you know, is that easier to do like once it gets going, or is it harder because people's imaginations are so different? Or do you think you become in tune and start becoming quite fluid in your thinking as a collective?
Well, I think that's a very interesting question, and the power that we work in groups in theatre generally, because, you know, especially in musical theatre, it's a big group as well. You live or you die by the voice of the director, and when you work with a great director, it's that unseen ability to turn the ship when it's going the wrong way, when people's imaginations are running wild, when people aren't happy, when they're just, you know, when the dissent amongst the ranks gets a little vociferous. It's that ability to quash that in a way that's not blindingly obvious. You know, it's a magic. You know, it's like, God, how did that happen? And I've worked with a couple of people who have that ability, and it's pretty amazing. Because yes, you're right. The collective voice. You only need one voice of dissent for it to gather like a snowball very quickly, and for the fear to take over. And you're like, oh yeah, we don't have an ending, and then this again, and then we can do that, and then that, and I had a friend who did that, and then you know, and it needs to be nipped in the bud very quickly. And because, especially as the theatre people, we can be quite hysterical about things. So yeah, I think whereas if it's just me and I'm working with the director on my one-man show, then it's a lot easier to go, yeah, I know. I can see that I'm going down that route. Don't shut up. Get up, have a cup of tea. So yeah.
And there's a last point before I summarise. I wondered if you had any ability to like just think about what would be a tip for allowing people to think more freely. You know, in the future, what is it that you do that gives you freedom of thought? Do you take yourself somewhere, for instance, or do you have to be somewhere or do something specifically? Is freedom?
I mean, I suppose you know, over years we are all aware as creatives that there is no right or wrong way to do it. Now, some people will do it by a pencil in their hand, and some people will do it by sitting with a laptop on their lap, or some people will do. And again, this links into the failure thing. There are no wrong answers. There's nothing bad about the way you've decided to do, whether it's hanging upside down naked from the town hall clock. You know, if that's what gets your creative juices going, I mean, I think maybe twice about doing it during the day. But nothing should be off limits to the creative process, and and also it'll take a while. This is the other thing for some people. And I always say this, any teaching or masterclass stuff that I do to students is that we are cursed by looking at our peers and judging ourselves by their success. And it is, and it will always be the worst enemy in any creative process. We all kind of vibrate at different times with different energy, and sometimes that's right for the time, and other times it isn't. And I've beat myself up for years for not. Oh, well, I can't think of anything. I can't think of. Doesn't matter. It'll come. It'll come, and it might take a while. It might take a year, but don't get hung up by the lateness of the arrival of the flash of brilliance or the need to have it now. So, and you have to try out these different ways, and it really might take a while before you find out that actually you are a nighttime writer. And thank God I'm not. I'm a nighttime sleeper, and a good one at that. So yeah.
That's a brilliant ending there. Actually, I like that, and it's funny, isn't it? The affliction that we can all carry, like wanting to live in other people's shadows, and the worry about getting stuff quickly, and it's like you say, finding out how you think best is. I've only, again, I think myself, recently really worked out that I get some of my best thinking if I give myself the space to do it when I'm on my dog walks in the morning.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
literally, like, I can solve all sorts of things. And the longer you quickly tell yourself that you haven't got time to do these things when you're busy, but actually those are the times when actually you need to give yourself more space to think freely. It's a funny old thing that how like curated or organic imagination and thought works.
Yeah.
But as in summary about imagination, what have we learned? I think there's a few things that have been standout for me. Like, one is like not to fear outcomes that aren't real. Like that's a really basic one. But try not to let them inhibit us to a point where it causes us despair.
Yeah.
We have the ability to put and change the inputs, so we're more in control of informing like our thinking. Like we were talking just now.
Don't let superstition get in the way of that. And that I'll always come back to that, and always with the kids I come back to that. Do not let superstition get in the way, because I think that can produce a fear that is unsurmountable or insurmountable.
It's a very good point. And like and if we do get stuck, then help fuel our imagination by working with others, because there's that wave of energy that can create between us.
Yeah.
And let's not forget, like, just a few points of bits on that you've mentioned today, which I think are absolute gems, and I love them. That entertainment is like medicine. It is medicine. It's like, let's remember that. That's a really good thing. And when we're in rooms with people, like, let's also like focus on the fact that, like you said at the very start of this, people want us to do good, and if we focus on that rather than the fear of failure, then actually that's a massive positive energy.
Don't be afraid of the failure as well.
That's an absolutely great point. Yeah, don't be afraid to look. It's learning from that failure, isn't it? That's
Definitely. And don't, because that obviously because otherwise fear will just be in that box that will be fear, and just turn the fear into something positive.
I think that's probably the most pertinent one. Thanks for reminding me on that. And my job again. Thank you. So thanks ever so much, Steve. It's been an incredible chat, mate. I really enjoyed it, exploring the unknown of our imagination, and how it kind of like seeks out reality. I'm totally looking forward to seeing you in your virtual installment of it's Lenny, isn't it?
It is, yes. The thing that Justin and I are doing, it's on the 10th of September at 7:00, live from, who knows if we're going to have a live audience or not, but I damn well hope that we can do the live stream. I mean, it's a 4-camera stream, so it should be pretty good.
I'm super excited about that, and I'm definitely excited about hopefully seeing you in the flesh at some point soon, back on a stage doing stuff. And just like to introduce the next stage that I'll be doing on a podcast, which will be the stage of fear, and I'll be doing that and chatting with Kelly Oakley, who is a sister in an acute stroke ward actually, and we'll be chatting about how fear itself affects her and her role and the people that she sees. And so that'd be quite an interesting, very different type of chat. So I think all that's left to say now is, again, just to quote you, as I think for those of you that are listening at night, like, surrender yourself to sleep. And do you want to say goodbye, Steve?
Thank you very much. It's odd because you always think, oh God, the sound of my own voice, but there's something about talking about the creative process within this context is great, and I think it's strangely, then now I'm fired up for the day because I've,
Oh, that's
you
good.
know, so I think that's all I can hope is that other people will be too. And I think it's a really interesting idea to talk to map this out in the 5 stages with 5 very different people in very different walks of life. So thank you, and just lovely to be part of it.
Oh, mate, it's been awesome. Thanks ever so much. So thanks, everyone. I'm out, and this is over and out.